I'm Douglas Murray. This is Direct Address. Some of you may have heard that I've got a new book coming out this week. On Democracies and Death Cults is coming out in the United States on the 8th of April and in the UK on the 10th of this month. It's going to be available on Amazon, on Audible, where you can hear me reading it myself. In the UK it's available at Waterstones, in the US Barnes & Noble, and anywhere else these days where you can find books to buy. But I wanted to use the opportunity today to just explain a little about what this book is about and what I hope to achieve with it. The book starts with two dates. The first is the 7th of October 2023. The second is a date that perhaps is less well known or less obvious, which is the 31st of January 1979. That was the date when the Ayatollah Khomeini, one of the most extreme, virulent, rabid advocates of a sectarian jihadist version of Shiite Islam, got on the plane where he had been living in exile in Paris and flew back to Tehran. The Islamic Revolution that followed and the Islamic Revolutionary government that seized power has been tormenting Iran, destroying Iran for the decades since then. But it hasn't been happy with just destroying Iran. It's also been colonizing the whole region. It's been colonizing Iraq, it's been colonizing Syria. For those people who care about colonization, they might also notice it's been colonizing and indeed destroying the country of Lebanon. It's also been doing what it can to colonize and destroy Yemen. But I believe that the Western mind is still unfamiliar with this strain of hatred, this strain of what I describe as a death cult, something that literally worships death, welcomes death, and exalts in death. We saw a bit of that exaltation, rather too much of it, on the 7th of October 2023, and a lot of people said after that horrific massacre by Hamas, backed, of course, by the Iranian Revolutionary government. A lot of people said that it had been the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and that's completely true. But I ask in the book, why is it that so few people address the other part of that question? Not just who the victims are and were, important though that is, but who the Nazis are. Who are the Nazis this time? And one of the reasons I think that we haven't been able to even address that question is because we don't want to answer it. Because if we had to answer it, we'd also have to answer the question of why these Nazis are among us, why we have so many people who support the death cults on our streets. You know, at one of the reunions of the survivors of the Nova Party, that was the dance party that was still going on at 6:30 in the morning on the 7th of October. One of the survivors of that party, who like everyone else had just gone to the desert to dance that night, he said to me at one of the reunions, "What would you do if this happened in your country?" And I thought about that, and I didn't actually answer him, because what I had in my mind was, but it has happened in my country. And it's happened in other countries I love. In 2017, a young radical Islamist, acting on this occasion in the name of ISIS, went into the Manchester Arena at the end of an Ariana Grande concert and detonated a suicide bomb. He killed 22 people, largely young women, who'd again just gone out that night to dance. I thought also of the people in the Bataclan Theatre in Paris who in 2015 were just spending the night at a rock concert in the centre of Paris when the death cultists stormed in. On that night in Paris, 131 people were massacred by the death cults. I also thought of the night in Orlando, Florida in 2016 when another person acting in the name of this foul ideology went into the Pulse nightclub, a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, and opened fire, killing 49 people who again had just gone out that night to dance. all of these atrocities were carried out by different sectarian groups, but they're all united by the same ideology as Hamas. They all glorify death, worship death, want to bring death on for themselves, but most importantly, for others. And in the 18 months since October the 7th, I've noticed that there are some people who think that Israel is somehow the cause of all this. That if Israel didn't defend itself, then, for instance, that guy in Manchester wouldn't have gone into an Ariana Grande concert with a rucksack packed filled with explosives and ball bearings. That if the State of Israel hadn't been created in 1948, somehow those gay nightclubbers in Orlando would have been able to finish their evening, or the people at the Bataclan Theatre wouldn't have been touched. I think that's flat out wrong. I think it's a deliberate attempt to avoid the real problems in our own midst. You see, I disagree with those people. I don't think that Israel causes any of that. I think that Israel shows an answer to that, and has shown it in the last year and a half. You see, much of Western man at the moment, in the face of such hate, wonders, what can we do in the face of such hate? One answer is to pretend it away, but sometimes that becomes impossible. It became impossible in Israel after the 7th. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from the response of the Israelis. There's this question, where should Western man go? And there are, as I see it, several paths, but two in particular. One is to go down the path of resentment and avoidance and blame of others. Another one is to stand up to the death cults, for people in liberal democracies to realize that to keep their liberal democracies free, you also have to have very harsh and hard boundaries against the people who would wish to destroy you. Israel has shown that in remarkable ways in the last 18 months. I know not everyone agrees with all of those ways. I set out the justifications for some of them in this book, and I set them out because I've seen them firsthand, unlike so many of the people who take different opinions from me. But to my mind, there's a clear path, a path of heroism, a path which says we know what we're defending and we want to defend it. We know what we love. We know we want to defend our friends, our families, our faith, our communities, our way of life, our freedoms themselves. We want to maintain the right to dance, whether the death cultists like it or not, and to do very much more along the way. I want to do two things before I finish today. The first is to thank you, my readers. I've been enormously blessed by the width, breadth, depth of my readership across the world in recent years. I never take it for granted, but I'm so honored and proud that so many of you have been supportive of me in reading my work, in critiquing my work, supporting my work, and much more. So first of all, a thank you to all of you. And secondly, and finally, I want to thank all of the people who made this book possible. I don't just mean the publishers, agents, and much more. I mean the people who actually inspired me to write it. The people I've had the enormous privilege of spending so much of the past few years with. Victims, yes. Hostage families and former hostages, yes. People who've suffered unbelievable things, certainly. But also all of those people who I've seen on the front lines, the fighters, the army, the men and women who know that they're fighting for life and fighting for their country and their people, and have inspired me to know that there's a way forward that can work if we only take it.